Hello guys, welcome to another episode of the Whiskey Diaries at Different Taxes. I'm your host Martin Lang, and tonight we're going to be doing a little bit something different. We're going to be interviewing our guest. He's a professional on Bladnoch, and this is going to be a format that we're going to be using in the future just to talk more about information about distilleries that you don't usually find online, and bits of information that are really characteristic to that distillery that only the people that are really, really close to them can know. This time we're here with Will Pitchforth. He is the brand manager. Just explain your role, please.
We're a really small team, so we always do a lot of things. I mostly look after all the export of Bladnoch around the world, and also do a lot of work with cask sales with independent bottlers. So.
Sweet. And what's your background? Why should we believe anything you say, for that matter?
Well, despite knowing each other for a long time, I don't know if you believe anything that I say, but I'm still trying. I've worked in the hospitality business for nearly 20 years now. Started working as a bartender, and then jumped over to the other side of the bar. I worked for Pernod Ricard for nearly 10 years. I worked here in Australia, and I worked in France as well.
Fluent French speaker as well.
Yeah, that's which is helpful for selling Bladnoch in France.
That was good times in France, yeah. Yes.
And then I moved back here and joined the Bladnoch team 3 years ago, and now have been fortunate enough to have Bladnoch take me back around the world and back to what I love doing, which is selling whiskey.
So let's go through a little bit of the Bladnoch, his history, obviously touching on the lowlands. As we know, Bladnoch is a lowland whiskey that just got recently refurbished and redone, but it has a pretty rich history. So obviously started in 1817. Lowlands whiskey in the beginning, when they first started, was basically at the same time in which the gin craze was happening in the UK, where gin basically was cheaper than water and cleaner at the same time. So all the distilleries in the lowlands that were producing basically really light whiskey style, so the new make, just to sell to the UK so they can make the gin. So how does that tie up with Bladnoch and its history as well?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think that we're even seeing that now, where a lot of lowland distilleries, before they've got whiskey produced, are actually making gin today. So I think that's still very much in the story
Which
of
lowlands distilleries at the moment are making gin?
So there's the guys up in Edinburgh, Edinburgh Gin Co. that are doing it. There's the Glasgow Distillery Company up in Glasgow. They've got a range of gins and even rums that they're making using their stills.
Yeah, right.
While their whiskey gets older. And the guys in Annandale as well, over in the lowlands. So.
Yeah, awesome. So obviously it pays the bills at the same time, but the reason why the whiskey started making so many light style of spirit, just to say, to the UK at the same time, made it really good for them to supply for blended whiskies as well.
Yeah.
So 95% of all the whiskey consumed in the world is blended. Coming down to 93 now, 93%, but at one stage in the 90s it was 99%. So Lowland was the main producer supplier for all grain whiskey, and also because of the Stein family being based in Bladnoch, which are the guys who created it, they continue still. Do you guys do a blended whiskey right now, and you supply as well to Johnny Walker, is that correct?
Well, look, it's not something that I can always reveal about who we're selling to, but one thing is for sure is that the lowlands are still very much the heart of blended whiskey. There's still most of the grain distilleries at Girvan, at Strathclyde, and in fact at North British as well, which is a grain distillery that supplies to a lot of independent blends, including ourselves. And they've got a fantastic range of grain whiskies that they produce. And
do you want to touch a little bit on the expansion that you guys did, from basically a little bit of history from the 1887 and all the different parts that you guys shut down? And
so it started, as you say, in 1817, and for a couple of years they built the distillery once they had the distilling license. In the 1830s, a lot of lowland distilleries closed when the taxation became a little bit more intense, and they sort of head for the hills and built their distilleries up in the highlands. But Bladnoch's been kind of continuously operating pretty much for that whole time, even if it's not always been producing whiskey. It had a lot of different owners, as you've said, over the last 200 years, from the McClellan family, who had it initially. It's been owned by a Irish company in the early 20th century. And changed hands really pretty much every kind of couple of decades until the early 1980s, when it was bought by became part of the United Distillers and Vintners, which was Bell's whiskey, which eventually became, of course, Diageo.
Diageo, yeah.
And in the late 80s and early 90s, a lot of those smaller distilleries, such as Bladnoch and Rosebank and so forth, were sold off or closed down by United Distillers prior to them becoming the Diageo company today. So in 1993, Bladnoch was sold by United Distillers to a couple of Northern Irish brothers, and they decided to turn it into like a tourism attraction, so you could come and stay on site in a distillery, and it'd be a kind of a great tour, and you could go camping and things like that. So it didn't take long though for them to decide that what they really wanted to do was make whiskey. So it took a bit of back and forward with the Scotch Whisky Association to essentially give the right to produce whiskey, which they got in the year 2000. And then started making whiskey, which they continued to do up until 2008. But
it was a very small production at the time.
Very small.
100,000 litres or so.
Oh, a bit more than that. The restriction was 100,000 litres, but they never produced 100,000 litres. And there was sort of short periods of distillation from 2000 to about 2008 where the whiskies that we've got today, a lot of those come from that period of distillation.
Yeah, and then in, 2014 got taken over by David, right?
Well, I mean, actually the two brothers basically didn't agree on the way forward for the business. And with such small amounts of production, it was really tough for them to decide whether they were going to be able to keep producing whiskey or whether they wanted to continue these plans to make it into tourism attraction. So essentially, because they couldn't agree, decided to sell the business, and so David bought it in 2015. It took about a year to kind of
and
run
he
the
went
sale.
he went in partnership with the next Scotch Society, right?
So David bought the distillery, but the distillery wasn't really as you say, it wasn't producing whiskey at the time. So he needed the help of someone to bring it back to its former glory, and so he engaged a former master distiller for Distell. So that's Tobermory and Budahaba. And Ian McMillan. He joined not long after David bought the distillery, and he oversaw the complete rejuvenation of Bladnoch. So we used Forsyths of Rhodes, which is the sort of top distillery makers in Scotland, and they essentially produced and installed 2 pairs of stills. We refurbished our mill and really brought the distillery up to
that's awesome.
The standard is today.
So now you're expanding the production to like 1.5 million litres a year, which is huge.
Well, I mean, as I say, the very first size of the distillery was around 4,000 litres back in the 1830s. We've gone from there over the years. We've
but like even like if
million.
you want to compare just for people just to get a reference, because obviously you don't really know how much 1.5 million litres is, but like at Tasmania, let's just say we talk about Sullivan's Cove or something like the Lark, they will be producing like 300,000 or maybe 400,000 litres a year, right?
I think that that's in Scotland, certainly for sure, because of all the restrictions on how you can make Scotch. The volume of whiskey produced really ranges from, famously, Edredua has got the smallest distillery, and they say 30 or 40,000 litres. The very biggest distilleries are, big commercial distilleries, 20 million litres.
Yeah,
so we're
doing 12 million as well. I forgot who I read about.
Girvan at Alshabay in Ayrshire, they're doing about 12 million.
So it's a decent operation.
Yeah.
So what's the plan for the future? So obviously you just started producing whiskey in 2017. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah.
So the new make being around 62 to 69%, no, 65 to 69% ABV.
Yeah, look, the old Bladnoch, here's something else that you won't find on the internet. I've managed to taste a few of the old new makes from the previous owners, from the Armstrongs, and they actually bottled new make and sold it as a product at the distillery called Bladnoch Dew. If you ever find a bottle of that, it's extremely rare, and we would love to buy back off you because we don't have much of it ourselves. But I tasted some of this, and when they had the distillery with the old stills, they were producing at 74%, which is very, very
that's
hot
really high. Yeah,
for their peated product was at 74%, and generally now we are producing at 69 to 70%, 69.5, 69.6 normally. And then we fill into the cask at 63.5%.
And the barrels are all American oak, or
no,
you try to
use a range. We use a range. We've got plenty of first fill bourbon barrels. It's
any distillery that you're bringing them from?
We bring quite a few. Last batch I saw, we had some from Wild Turkey, we had some from Heaven Hill, we had some from Barton's Distillery. So
Awesome.
essentially the way that it works is that there's always a broker who'll kind of collect the barrels and sell them into Scotland.
Yeah.
Unless you're a Scotch whisky company that owns a bourbon company, as you are if you're...
yeah, well, let's not go into those. And then the barley, where do you guys get the barley from?
Great. So we don't grow our own barley. There's not many people that can provide their own needs, especially
especially 1.5 million.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't. It's impossible.
But choosing barley is obviously really important to have a reliable source.
Especially with the new strains and.
Yeah. So we use at the moment we use barley laureate barley type.
Okay, cool.
And we source it from Simpson's Maltsters.
Yep.
And
that's in Highlands, right?
No, it's in the north of the Maltsters in the north of England, but the barley comes from all around. So
yeah, right.
And we're actually buying two different kinds of malt. We're purchasing an unpeated style pot still malt.
I was going to ask the next question.
Yeah.
So
and a peated style.
So specifications for the peated, what was it, ppm sitting at?
It's about 65 to 80.
Oh wow,
ppm.
so that's pretty high. Well, by the time you distill it, that chops down to probably what's the new make coming out when you
40 to 60.
40 to 60. So heavily peated. Are you barreling that straight away, or are you going to do a full peated version, or is more for blends?
Well, I think that what it is that when we bought the distillery, we had so few barrels to choose from this period of distillation. We need to build a great library of whiskies for the future. I mean, the big thing about restarting a distillery is you're essentially repopulating the stocks, and so some peated whiskey. Who knows? We might do something in the future. We might just use it for blends.
And you're going to skip with the current range that we're going to try in a second, obviously, and we're going to talk about individually. But you're going to try and keep this current range, or you think it's going to evolve to? We're
definitely going to evolve. So Nick joined us as our new master distiller last year.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about this. This is Dr. Nick Savage, Savage.
You said it so beautifully with your name. But so Nick Savage, he joined us from the Macallan, where he was master distiller. He was a master distiller.
That's big news, hey?
Yeah, it was huge. We're very fortunate to have him join the team. He was at Macallan throughout the whole new distillery that they produced. That they rebuilt over the last few years, and joined Bladnoch with a lot of new ideas, which has been obviously fantastic for the brand to have such an accomplished master distiller bring his ideas to the table. And he's got some great things in the pipeline for Bladnoch, including, of course, how we can best use the whiskey as it starts to become old enough to sell as whiskey, and it has to be at least 3 years old.
Yeah, of course.
And so, again, how we can incorporate that into our range over the next few years is really going to be one of Nick's biggest
Are you going to wait until you do like an 8-10-year-old, or are you going to try and sell more like a non-age statement, age statement?
Look, at the moment, we've got a few different ideas. Look, there have been a few distilleries that have bottled a 3-year-old, and I think that that's a bit of a challenge for a lot of whiskey drinkers. That being said, I've tasted some of our young whiskies, and they're delicious, pretty fantastic. In fact, we've got a little bit of young whiskey that I brought along today that I brought from the distillery.
We're going to try it in a sec.
But definitely there's some advantages of maintaining a range of aged whiskies, which is our plan, and at the same time bringing some new non-aged statement whiskies to introduce the new style of Bladnochs that we're producing.
Awesome. You've been to the distillery a few times.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us anything about, because I've been reading a few of the reviews online and stuff, and now obviously the distillery for tourism's open like 2019, September, right? Around that time, and then there was a couple of hiccups there. Well, that's what I read anyway. Now it's fully operational for tourism and everything.
Yeah, that's right.
Visit the distillery a few times.
I wouldn't say hiccups. I'd say that our initial plan was to open the visitor centre quite early, but once we started renovating, the priority was getting the whiskey making up and going. Of course. And that was really the focus, was making sure everything was just perfect before we opened the doors to tourists again. And there was a lot of demand from whiskey lovers, especially Bladnoch lovers, to say we want to come and see what you're doing. Yeah. So we opened middle of last year. We had an official opening with the Duke of Rothesay, Prince Charles. He came and opened up the distillery. And he's a well-known whiskey fan. He loves doing whiskey distillery openings, and he's a big fan of Bladnoch. So we've got a cafe and a bar on site as well, and we have, of course, the visitor centre for tours that we run.
Any bits of information that you liked about the distillery when you went there?
Look, I think that one of the things I like is that when we rebuilt the distillery, it's been very much done in a traditional and classic way. You're not seeing a lot of computers or remote operated valves.
You've got a traditional Hakota rooftop as well.
The pagoda roof, which we don't use pagoda. We're not doing our own maltings, but
No,
the Doig ventilator is like a real symbol of.
Well, 100% introduced.
But in terms of actually in the distillery, it's very much like, even though it's obviously all been rebuilt, it's still very faithful to that whiskey is handcrafted. I love our dunnage warehouses. So we have a dirt floor dunnage style warehouse. So they're very, very large. We have 5 acres of warehouses. Yeah, wow. But they're only stacked relatively low because, again,
I saw a few pictures. So you don't. Yeah, they're not that big, that high. Sorry. Awesome. All right, well, let's. If you have any other stories, otherwise we can just start jumping into the core range. So, what do you want to start with? Because you've got a 198 Stageman, and then you jump into the 10. Do you want to start with the Samsara?
No, let's start with the 10 because I think the thing I like about 10-year-old is that for people who remember Bladnoch from the previous owners, they you've pre-poured us a dram already, so
you're gonna have to start with that. That's just to warm up the palate. Delicious.
So we had I guess a few Bladnoch fans, and they've come to us and said that the 10-year-old is the most reminiscent of the Bladnoch that they used to know, 10, 15, 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And one of the great Bladnochs of history is the Flora and Fauna edition that was released nearly 20 years ago, which is a Bladnoch of
they don't do it anymore, right?
They definitely don't do it anymore. It's a Bladnoch all bourbon cask expression, and I guess this one to me is the most evocative of that 10-year-old Flora and Fauna. So for people who know a little about Bladnoch, or maybe they want to discover the kind of traditional style, then I think 10-year-old is a really great way to start into it. So another thing that's really important to note about all Bladnochs is that all of our single malts we bottle without chill filtration. We always use natural colour.
Awesome. Yeah, I read
we
about
always
that.
Bottle at 46.7% or cask strength.
That's a pretty heavy number.
Yeah, well, I mean 46 is that kind of magic number, and for non-chill filtered whiskey. Yeah. And then 46.7. I mean the trick there is that when you're bottling a whiskey and you're reducing it with water to hit a particular number, there's always a margin of error. Yeah, because the machine that measures it has always got a bit of leeway either side. At 46.7, it guarantees that every single drop is above 46. So it means that the non-filtration is essential for maintaining the integrity of the flavour. Yeah, and especially comes through in lighter malts like 10-year-old, where there's a
So we touched in previous episode. We chatted about the unchill filtration, and basically what it does is just when you add ice, it just becomes a little bit cloudy sometimes, but it keeps a lot of the essential oils and a lot of the flavor. A lot of purists believe that non-chill filtration is actually something bad to the whiskey. So not doing it is actually quite brave as well, because in colder climates as well, the bottle can go cloudy as well. But it actually makes the flavor a lot different, a lot better. Can you tell us a little bit about the bottle, because it's a very unusual bottle for a Scotch malt, for a classic whiskey as well, considering the 200-year history about it, and also, what was the bottle like when it first started? Like the initial bottlings?
The oldest ones in the early 19th century were a very kind of classic, I think, brown or green glass bottle, because of the ease of production of brown and green glass back then, and they were generally in pints or in imperial measures. Yeah. So I've seen the oldest bottle I would have seen of Bladnoch would have been kind of late 19th century, 1880s or so, and again very traditional, as you say, kind of classic bottlings. The most recent bottling before us was with the two brothers who owned Bladnoch, and it was a very kind of standard, almost a wine bottle type shape bottle, and the labels were hand applied and kind of it was very small.
They have a goat on the front.
They have a sheep, a goat, a cow.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, so they were very much a kind of. It felt very much like a small kind of farm distillery type approach. Yeah, right. When David bought Bladnoch, and we decided that we had to kind of relaunch the single malts, and obviously there's been a lot of work from the team in the distillery about actually choosing the whiskey. We wanted to ensure that the bottle also really stood out as much as we feel the distillery stands out as being quite unusual as a lowlander, as an old lowlander, independent, and so forth. So the bottle really shows off the whiskey really well. That short, square bottle, especially if you can see with the when you're looking through it, a full bottle, when you can see the whiskey, it's a great way to really showcase the colour, and again, it's natural colour, so it's important to see it in the bottle. And that really nice clear white flint is important for showcasing the whiskey. We love the square bottle because, as you say, it stands out. It's very different. I think some people perhaps don't even realise that it's a 700ml bottle because it is so short. But as I say, the idea is to stand out, to be a bit different. We love the kind of really angular look to it, and it's going to be.
We were talking about a while back. You had some troubles to find the leads because, well, obviously this is the classic. It's a wooden style lead, but then when we go into the other higher versions, you got the metal lead, and it was a little bit of a problem in production. And
well, I mean, it's quite a wide mouth to the bottle as well, and that's obviously great when you're pouring it at home because it goes. But we've worked on trying to find a pourer that works with the wide mouth.
The bottle.
The stoppers. We've got a really great stopper supplier, which is an Austrian company that provides our beautiful stoppers. The metallic stoppers for the higher end Bladnochs are definitely and we'll see them when we get to them, but they're definitely a bit of a work of art. But for the 10-year-old, the stopper, it's simple. It's got the B engraved on the top.
I love the wood. It's great. I really like it.
It's everything about the package when you're buying a high-end single malt needs to be something pretty good.
Well, let's go through a little bit of the tasting notes on this one.
Sure.
Lead us through. Obviously, for me, I can smell the grassy notes from a lowland. It's quite light on the nose.
This of all our expressions is the one that lets you kind of identify those sort of really classic Bladnoch notes. And I've just come from the Whisky Festival in New Zealand, and the people coming up saying Bladnoch would look at this and go, "This is what reminds me of Bladnoch." So at the same time, bourbon cask means there's lots of that vanilla and lots of that kind of elements of sweetness. Is a little bit citrusy.
It's you can definitely taste the 46 ABV there as well. This will go great with a few drops as well. A few drops of water will actually open up. We forgot to bring the droppers today, but that's okay.
Have to use your imagination.
Cool. So that's the 10. The next one has no age statement. It's called a Samsara. Again, this one we start seeing the lovely stoppers that they got made. They're actually quite heavy as well. You can probably throw this at someone. Tell us about the Samsara.
Samsara is it's actually a Sanskrit word, and it comes from a philosophy of life, death, and rebirth. Samsara in this philosophy of life being a cycle, and it's really fitting. It was one of our first whiskies we produced, and it's very suitable for a distillery that's had a cycle of life and then of dormancy and then being reborn again. So it was kind of quite symbolic for us to have a whiskey that celebrates the fact that Bladnoch's back again. Samsara is a combination of bourbon cask matured and red wine cask matured whiskey. You can see here, if you see the colour, it's considerably darker in the Samsara, and that comes, of course, from the red wine maturation. But the key to this is that, and I think Nick always says it best, is that our non-age statement whiskies are character-led. They're led by a particular flavour, and sometimes people can tend to get very fixated on a particular number. But Samsara is, as I say, it's led by that red wine maturation. So we use, for this whiskey, California red wine barrels from the Napa Valley in California. They are a combination of Merlot and Syrah in this particular expression, and it gives it a real... the flavour is definitely there of wine, but there's a textural impact of maturation red wine, and there's almost like a sort of a soft kind of creaminess that goes into a
and what do you
Samsara.
So why did you say, because all the rest of the bottles have an age statement to it, why did you guys decide to do the Samsara as a no age statement, and can you tell us what's in it?
Well, it's Bladnoch in it. It's all Bladnoch. I can tell you that.
Obviously.
Look, So this Samsara that we've got here is made from Bladnoch Whiskies, and Bladnoch stopped producing whiskey in 2008. So you can guess the how old this whiskey could possibly be. However, the key to this is, especially to differentiate it from the 10-year-old, which is all bourbon cask, is the red wine component. And the red wine whiskey, matured whiskey by itself, perhaps the flavour is going to be just have too much intensity. So by putting it together with a bourbon cask matured whiskey, it balances out that real intensity of wine flavours that you get into the.
And the red wine was from the previous owners.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So it was one of the barrels that were.
And do you think that the new make spirit that you guys are doing now, well, obviously you already tasted it, is going to affect a lot the future stock compared to? Do you think let's just say I'm a massive fan of Bladnoch Samsara, and in like 5-10 years time when you start releasing new bottlings with the new make, is it going to be completely different? Do you think it's going to be a big change in flavour profile? Or
I think that's the skill of the master distiller and blender. That's Nick's job to make sure that Bladnoch fans are going on this journey where they're not we don't disrupt the flavour and the story of Bladnoch, because at the end of the day we're custodians for a 200-year-old distillery. We're not going to completely change what we're all about. So it's an evolution, really.
Would you suggest to people to stock on these and just keep it for a while?
Well, I mean, all of our whiskies are very limited. Again, we only had a really limited number of barrels that we bought.
Yeah,
so.
Of course. Awesome. Well, that one is, you don't have to. So this is the Samsara. Let me put a little bit more.
No, this is the 10-year-old.
There's a 10. Yeah. I'm just going to put it here. Just going to leave that one there. I'll let you guide us through this one.
So, Samsara, again, as I say, is all about that red wine influence. I think that one of the things when I've tasted this with people, and again this weekend I've been at a whiskey show, and people are expecting to detect like real kind of strong fruity characteristics, but Samsara, because it's matured in red wine, it's got that longer period in the barrel. It again is much more textural. The nose that it's got, again, a real kind of, as I say, creaminess to it that isn't necessarily what you expect. I think Samsara, of all our whiskies, is one that I could nose amongst 100 whiskies, and I'll put my nose on it. I'll know it's Samsara. It really is quite distinctive. And on the finish of the palate, I'm going to drink out of your whiskey glass.
Yeah, that's all right. No coronavirus here. Yeah.
And that nose of that creaminess really is delivered on the palate when you're going. There's so much more. There's so much more in that mid palate than the 10, which is very
at the back
citrusy and it really at the front, and then Samsara's just got that wonderful. Almost, it's not even tannic of wine. It's
I see what you mean about. There's still that chewiness that you get from some wine, almost like a sherry.
Yeah, a little bit. It's almost got that feeling to it.
That's great. Well, we're going to move into the 15-year-old. This is 100% 15-year-old American oak.
100% sherry cask.
100% sherry cask.
Yeah.
Well, you look at that. Where's the sherry cask coming from?
In fact, to produce the Adela, we essentially had a very limited number of sherry butts from the previous stock that we bought, and Adela is really some of the very best butts of.
And Adela, the name being.
So Adela is a name that we just love. It's a person's name, and it's from a Latin origin, and the kind of meaning of the name is rich and noble. But really, it's a name that we just love, and I think it's quite descriptive of us. And it was one that was chosen right back at the start. We had Samsara, Adela, and then Talia. The whiskey itself is probably not as traditionally Bladnoch because it really is driven by that sherry.
Okay.
It's not what I would call a sherry bomb. I think it's got a good balance to the sherry notes.
Okay.
There's a number of great distillers out there that are making very heavily sherried whiskies, and this one is a bit more balanced.
And sherry, is it Oloroso, Amoroso?
Oloroso,
right.
100% Oloroso sherry cask. So,
and they would have been pretty old, right?
So all of the stock, this particular bottle, I can tell because I know what the label is. There's all from 2001.
Okay.
So, and it was actually bottled. So here's another good little secret for you: is that this one here, I can tell because it's got the batch code on the back, was bottled in, I believe, 2018, and therefore it's actually a little older than 15 years old. Because as you know, 15.
Yeah, it has to be the younger.
It's just the youngest.
Tell us about a sherry butt. What's the size of a sherry butt usually?
It's about 520 litres, bulk litres. When we talk about production of a distillery, the millions of litres, or 1.5 million litres, is the litres of alcohol. But of course, the cask is filled with spirit that's reduced to 63.5. So it's 520 litres of liquid. And then it works out at about 350 litres or so of alcohol that goes in there. So they're very large. These sherry butts. They're one of the largest ones. The barrels that are used. The law on whiskey is you can't use a barrel bigger than 700 litres. But other than the butts and puncheons are about as big as you really get. So what this means is that the surface area to the whiskey is much reduced compared to a smaller barrel, like a bourbon barrel. And therefore, a longer time in this barrel really helps develop those flavours.
Yeah, well, we've got to drink that water. That's not whiskey. We're not going to get too wasted today. That's definitely sherry notes in there. You get those Christmas pudding.
All that dried fruits and raisiny kind of.
That's great.
It's
a lot for some reason. Same maybe for some reason starts to be a little bit more mellow.
Yeah, it's definitely very soft.
A lot softer than the 10.
It's deceptive that you've still got a pretty strong ABV that it softens it out. But again, 15 years and all.
15 hours, well, that's what age does. Okay, well, that's awesome. And then we're just going to go to the last one. It's a 25-year-old. There's not a lot of this left.
No.
In fact, this is 49.2 as well, so it's just slightly different. Tell us about it.
I can actually tell you that there's none of it left.
None of it left.
So the bottle that you can get here at Glethen Taxes is the end of it, because we have a small release of Talia every year. And the New Oak was the first release that we did of these barrels. So the oldest barrels that we have from the purchase of the distillery, the oldest one actually is 1988.
Oh wow!
And we had one barrel from 1988, and we've made a bicentennial edition from that oldest barrel. The next oldest barrels were really from 1990 to 1993, just before the distillery was sold. And these barrels are pretty exceptional, and they're from the same stock that the flora and fauna I was talking about earlier is from, and they are essentially a couple of barrels are chosen each year by Nick and made into an edition of Talia. So we're looking at maybe 1,000 bottles a year worldwide of this.
It's not a lot.
So in this first one, this New Oak that we produced,
just in comparison, sorry to interrupt you, the Talisker 41-year-old that we were reviewing in a previous episode, there's only 2,000 bottles done, and that's a pretty rare. So $1,000 bottles a year, it's pretty unique, especially worldwide.
Exactly.
Most of your Chinese market would have bought all of that.
So China definitely loves this one. Germany also they've picked up a bit, but Australia gets a little bit because we're an Australian-owned company. Then obviously we get lots of first looks.
First Scottish distillery owned by an Australian, correct?
That's right. As far as we know, that's absolutely right. It's very unusual for a distillery to be independently owned when it's old. A lot of the independent distilleries are new.
It will be protected as well, wouldn't it?
Well, often they've traded hands and they haven't been before they haven't managed to make their way into independent ownership. So it is quite unusual. We're the oldest independently owned distillery
that's awesome.
Of Scotland.
Well, let's try this last one, and then we're gonna just talk a little bit more about the new make. And
sure. So the Talia is always cask strength. So it's always natural colour. It's always non-chill filtered, but the Talia itself is actually cask strength. So in this case, and I have to check it because it changes every year, but this one is 49.2%. Which is about right for 25 years in barrel to the Angel Share loss. This one is a combination of bourbon sherry casks that have been vatted together and given a new oak finish. And that's quite unusual to do a new oak finish on such an old whiskey, but it gives it really just the rounding off to bring
just
together
to finish it
barrel
off
parts.
and stuff. Yeah.
So there's this beautiful kind of deep colour that comes from the sherry component.
And it's again obviously Oloroso sherry. Yeah.
Oloroso sherry.
Are you guys planning
bourbon
to
cask.
keep those barrels for the future use?
Absolutely, yeah. We've definitely refilled the barrels already.
Yep.
That we've used to make this.
And who's your cooperage?
We have 2 that we use in Spain for our sherry barrels, and we have 1 that we use in the US for our bourbon casks. And then
so they're already fixed before they arrive.
Yeah,
to
that's
the
right.
distillery.
And then we use a contract cooper to come and repair barrels and
repair all the
staves
barrels
and things like that. So
any leakings and the sorts.
yeah, exactly. So it's we've got a great team at Bladnoch. So one of the great things, I guess, that you asked before about what I appreciated when I went and visited the distillery is that when we were closed down, there were a couple of people employed to kind of do a few tours and run the little shop. We now employ over 20 people, and there are 55 people that live at Bladnoch. So you can imagine employing 20 people makes us quite a big employer of the area. So one of the great things about it is that a lot of people who used to work at Bladnoch have come back to work for us.
Oh wow!
And so we've got one of our team at the distillery. He has worked on and off of Bladnoch for nearly 40 years now.
Wow!
And that's pretty special that we've got a real team of locals that work at Bladnoch and work
That's
at the distillery.
awesome. Nice.
So the next 49.2.
49.2. That's a big kick.
So the next Talia that we'll have here in Australia will be the 2020 edition, which is the first Talia that Nick Savage has completely made himself.
Oh wow, cool. That'd be super interesting to see.
Yeah, it's going to be 1993 casks of red wine cask finished.
Right. Oh, forgot to ask about going back to the 15. How many years on the red? How many years?
No, it's all matured. So a combination of refill and first fill.
Of red wine.
On the 15 is all Oloroso.
Oh, Oloroso, right.
Oloroso.
So that one is the red wine.
Red wine, exactly. Red wine.
And then, so how many years in the red wine? Approximately, let's just say not years, but let's just say percentage.
The proportion is about 60% of its bourbon cask and 40% of its red wine.
Right,
cask,
so it's pretty heavy.
Yeah,
okay, well that's
exactly.
going back, and then we'll go back to the 25. Yeah. So give us a rundown.
So for this one, the new oak is evident, but it's not kind of overpowering the effect of new oak casks. It just gives that real kind of little bit of spice and a little tingle.
Sweet, yeah. It's a lot sweeter than the previous one on the front.
Oh yeah, but it's got that wonderful dryness that the 25 years.
Yeah, of course.
Again, I've been fortunate enough to try it from the cask a couple of the barrels that are used to make Talia, and it's got a pretty amazing sample room that we'll have to get you to come and check it out one day. But
I'm waiting for the invite.
But this one here is it's a real snapshot of the history of Bladnoch. It's one thing I love about Talia is that the first 3 that we've tried today have all been from the previous ownership, 2000 to 2008 distillation. The Talias are from that earlier period of Bladnoch, and again it's just a window back to where Bladnoch's come from.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing about Scotland, isn't it? And Scottish whiskey as well.
But there's this wonderful chocolate in the back of this. I'm a big fan of this new oak, and again, the only place you can find it now is at a couple of our friends like you guys who have a bottle on the back bar, because it is completely finished. Despite people calling me up going, "Come on, I bet you've got a couple of boxes hiding away." No, it's
completely
all sold,
finished.
So.
Yeah, we want a cobbler as well.
Yeah.
It's a great whiskey. Okay, so you want to show us a couple of the secrets that you got there as well?
Yeah. So I guess 2 things that you don't always get a chance to see from distilleries. The first one is some new make spirit.
Yeah.
So you can see that new make spirit essentially is completely clear and colourless, and I think that it really sort of shows you just the impact that cask aging really makes on colour when you see the natural colour of the older Bladnochs to go from essentially looks like a vodka
Yeah,
or a
so
gin through the colour from the barrel.
different names as well for clear spirit. Is the White Dog, Poitín in Ireland,
Machine, or Moonshine in the United States, corn liquor, mellow corn. But for a new make spirit is, I think a lot of people that perhaps haven't had the opportunity to try it would expect that it would be really, really harsh and maybe really kind of tough to drink. And while it's definitely something that I recommend trying it once it's been for 10 years in a barrel. One of the things I love about new make spirit is you really get an appreciation of how much flavour actually comes from the barley. Double distillation doesn't make it into vodka. There's not a neutral soft
100%.
flavour. There's a really kind of intense sort of cereal note to the new make spirit. So if you get a bit of a smell of this. Now this is at, I think this is a cask filling strength.
So this one is 63.6.
Yeah, so this is the strength that would go into a cask at.
So when I've been to a few distilleries, obviously around Scotland and around the world, and I had I was lucky enough to meet the master distillers, and there's a lot of times where they actually ask you to just put some new make in the hand, just a little bit, and then just rub it like that.
And it's a great way to take out the volatile alcohol and get
because it evaporates in your hands, and you can really smell the actual barley, the cereal smell, and how good it actually shows a lot of character and stuff.
I love the smell of new make because it's what it's like when you visit the distillery.
Yeah, well, it's exactly.
It's the smell of walking through Bladnoch.
Yeah, exactly. You walk through and you can smell it, and it's a really good way of just reminding how where it comes from. Where it comes from, exactly.
Yeah. So we can you can taste really the Bladnoch character here, and I think Nick puts it really well when he talks about our new make, because it's got like a kind of green apple kind of flavour to it.
I was actually going to say that. Yeah, as soon as you evaporates everything, you left the aromas there. It's actually incredible.
And it's still, of course, got that cereal, that lovely maltiness to it. But it's quite a nice spirit. And if you visit the distillery, or when we visit the distillery, you can actually buy a bottle of new make spirit to take.
That's
home.
awesome. So not many people do that.
Yeah, which is pretty special.
And with the new make, you said that you try new make from the past. Mm-hmm. The barley was differently, obviously, back then in the 90s. I would assume it would be something like Golden Promise or something or other. You wouldn't remember?
Probably, possibly. Look, I don't know off the top of my head, but I think that the biggest change actually was the different shape of stills and the different cut.
You're right.
As of course you know, the still shape and then where you choose to take the cut makes a big difference. I would say that having tasted the older new make, there's a lot more grass in it, which is a taste that, as you say, traditionally was known for the lowlands, but we've captured a bit more of that crisp fruitiness to it.
And this was the 2nd of March of 2018.
Yep,
that's pretty cool. Yeah,
so
there as well. So you can
really nice for people to really discover it. When they go to the distillery, we actually give people a taste when they do the tour at the end.
Yeah, that's great.
Again, not everybody does that, but we're so proud of the quality of the new make that we're producing.
Yeah,
it gives you an appreciation when you're there.
They don't usually do it for commercial, like for general public, but a lot of the times if you do get a private tour, I was lucky enough to taste new make of Balvenie, Glenfiddich, and a few other distilleries. But essentially, when you do actually do the commercial normal tours, they don't really give you the new make. So that's really cool.
I think a big thing about Bladnoch is that we really got a lot of stories to tell, and we don't really hide things and be sort of cloak and dagger about it. We want people, especially if they made the trek to come and visit us, show people what we're all about.
Exactly.
So. And then I've got one other very special thing, and this is actually a cask sample from some Bladnoch that's been aging as well. So this is actually some 2-year-old Scotch spirit.
Oh, right. Cool.
Again, this is just a little
200
sample.
61.7%.
Yeah, so this has been aging for a couple of years now, and
2017.
A bit of an indication of kind of what we're heading towards.
Right.
And,
look at the colour.
There's a really light bit of colour that goes into.
And this was 100% American oak.
This is all 100% American oak. First fill.
And this would have been from what you say, Wild Turkey barrels.
Yeah, Heaven Hill, Wild Turkey.
Yeah.
I think possibly Wild Turkey in this one. I can't recall. I was fortunate enough to pull it out the barrel with our distillery manager.
It's just going to be a tiny bit, just to try it. But you can definitely already smell, obviously, the new make spirit.
Yeah, but it's starting to be rounded out by some of that bourbon. So
from the bourbon and stuff is actually quite interesting.
So you can see that we've already lost a couple of percentage points of alcohol. We're really seeing an angel share of 1 to 2% every couple of years of alcohol loss.
Yeah, that's definitely. Yeah, you can taste the new make and that aromas that you get from up, but then the spiciness from the American oak is actually starting to come through. Still, obviously, still too young.
Still very young, but always nice, I think, to get an understanding
just
of
to
where
give
we're
you an
heading
idea
to.
and see. So with this one in particular, what's the time frame? What do you think in 5 years? 6 years?
Look, I think that it'll need a few more years in the oak before we're commercialising it by itself. But we're doing a lot more than just bourbon barrels. You know, with sherry, with smaller barrels as well, with a higher surface area. I think that Nick's got a big job ahead of him to really shape the future of Bladnoch from what we're putting down. So
100%. And then finally, just to briefly touch on Pure Scot, the blend.
Yeah. So Pure Scot, our blended whiskey, is something that was created by David. He really started working on it before he even bought Bladnoch, and he had the idea of creating a blended whiskey that sort of suited his particular style of taste, and he wanted something that was very light, very much about for cocktails and for mixing, which is not traditionally an approach taken by a lot of old traditional blends. Then when he bought Bladnoch, we had this source, of course, of expertise, but also some great malts. So Pure Scot is a blend that incorporates Bladnoch, along with, of course, a few other single malts, a grain whiskey from the lowlands, and we've kind of put it together as a way to, open up Scotch whisky drinking to some different parts of the market that maybe wouldn't be necessarily going for a classic single malt, but with a very light, slightly peated style.
What's the ppm on Pure Scot at the moment?
It's very, very low.
About
It'd be single digit ppm in Pure Scot.
Just to give it a little bit of...
Just to give it a little bit of a kick. But the idea is that we want it to be mixed, we want to put it in cocktails. You guys make some beautiful cocktails with it here. And it gives us a chance to offer a product that kind of acts as a bit of a counterpoint to these more traditional single malt styles.
And you're doing a few other versions as well of Pure Scot.
We do a signature version where it's at 40% and it's very light and very much for mixing. We do a virgin oak, which has got another 9 months of aging in virgin oak at Bladnoch. So one of the great things when you go to Bladnoch, you won't just see barrels of Bladnoch, you'll see barrels of Pure Scot virgin oak aging as well.
Cool.
And Nick's even working on a secret project at the moment for a new expression of Pure Scot with a different kind of twist on the flavour.
And the grain, where are you getting it from?
It's from North British.
North British. It's just already distilled, or you just get the grain and distill it yourself?
No. It's all distilled and aged at North British. So.
Cool.
Another independent.
Independent.
Lowlands
so
distillery.
And what's the percentage for the grain?
Look, it's pretty high malt content, but
you need a backbone.
Sorry.
You need a backbone for a blended whiskey.
You need to have it pretty strong, and of course there's some of the Bladnoch in it. So there's a number of malts, but the most important one, of course, is the Bladnoch, which will always be part of the Pure Scot story. So
how many malts does it go in the?
Look, there's probably a dozen malts. That go into,
you don't want to tell us?
No. You're not getting the secrets out of me. I haven't just applied enough whiskey yet. So.
Okay, well that was great. Anything you want to add just before we cheers? I think this one one of my favorites. To be honest, I really do enjoy a sherry bomb. As you said, not a strong sherry bomb, but still really like the sherry coming through. But any other more details or anything that you want to tell us?
Look, I think the most important thing is that we don't make a lot of Bladnoch each year because we've got so little to put into bottles. So that when we find one and we've got great partners like you guys that serve it up, it's all about telling the story. Because in the future, I think there's a lot of great things ahead for Bladnoch, and there's going to be a lot of new things to be produced. But this range that we've got today is kind of like the beginning of the rest of our lives. So it's quite an exciting time for us now.
And also before I forget as well, there's a lot of distilleries out there that they do like cask programs where you can buy casks and all that stuff. You guys are doing something like that, right?
We absolutely do. It's very, very small production of casks for individuals. it's a program that for the really greatest friends of Bladnoch, we can produce a cask, and it's something that you have to be.
You recently did one with what is it, LDV? No, Boilermaker House.
Boilermaker House. Oh yeah, you're absolutely right. So our friends at Boilermaker House down in Melbourne, they've got their own very special cask. So it's something
cool.
that look, if someone wants a cask, then get in touch, because we'd love to see what you're keen to do. But yeah, it's a referral program only for our existing friends, because again, some of the great supporters of Bladnoch are key to helping us grow the
Awesome.
whiskey.
Well, thank you very much, Will.
That's right.
And
Cheers.
Slàinte mhath.
Slàinte mhath.